We're going to begin with a civil trial ruling that will cost Donald Trump and his family and his company hundreds of millions of dollars to be paid to the state of New York. Here are the particulars. The judge punishing the former president with a huge $355 million payment and barring him from doing business in New York for 3 years. The judge also saying Mr. Trump showed no remorse for inflating his net worth to banks and the government, among others.
The former president's sons, Donald Jr. and Eric Trump, have each been ordered to pay $4 million. The ruling comes after 44 days of testimony, during which we heard from 4 members of the Trump family and a total of 46 witnesses.
Lots to unpack here. Eyewitness News reporter Jim Dolan live in the newsroom with our lead story tonight.
Bill, Donald Trump is a man who enjoys being a billionaire, all of it. The lavish homes, the splashy galas, the endless attention. In his recent trial, there was testimony that he adjusted the value of some assets specifically to make him look more wealthy than he actually is. But now, found to have defrauded both the state and several banks, Donald Trump was ordered today to pay $354 million in penalties. Even a billionaire will miss this kind of money. A judge in Manhattan today ordered former President Donald Trump to pay in fines and penalties more than most rich people ever see. Trump was found months ago to have defrauded the state of New York by lying on forms submitted to banks and the state that overstated his wealth and his assets, including his lavish apartment on Fifth Avenue. Today, the punishment. The former president will have to pay $354 million. Others with the company, including his 2 sons, will have to pay an additional $9 million. They will have to submit to oversight from a state-appointed monitor of the company. Trump is banned now from serving as an officer of any New York company, including his own, for 3 years. And his 2 sons are banned for 2 years. But it is the money that will surely get the headlines here.
All of these ill-gotten gains we need to remove from Trump and give it back to New York. So this is all based on calculations of, interest he got away with not paying, or things that he was able to buy by securing loans or providing false statements.
In a scathing, riveting 90-page ruling today, Judge Arthur Engoron said the frauds found here leap off the page and shock the conscience. And of the defendants, including Trump, Engoron wrote, their complete lack of contrition and remorse borders on the pathological. Defendants are incapable of admitting the error of their ways. Instead, they adopt a see no evil, hear no evil posture that the evidence belies. Trump was found to have defrauded the state months ago, and the trial was to determine a proper fine. Throughout, Trump was combative and disruptive, raging against the judge and the state attorney general who brought it. It may be a strategy that today he is reconsidering the wisdom of. Still, his lawyer, Alan Ahaba, said in a statement, this verdict is a manifest injustice. It is the culmination of a multi-year political witch hunt that was designed to take down Donald Trump. Mr. Trump will appeal today's decision.
Whether you're the President of the United States, a past president and forever past president of the United States, or you're an ordinary business person, no one is above the law here in the state of New York.
Just moments ago, the former president issued this statement. The decision is a complete sham, he said. There were no victims, no damages, no complaints, only satisfied banks and insurance companies, which all made a ton of money, he said. Great financial statements that didn't even include the most valuable asset, the Trump brand. The state attorney general who brought this case had a much different view. Letitia James said in her statement, for years, Donald Trump engaged in a massive fraud to falsely inflate his net worth and unjustly enrich himself, his family, and his organization. While he may have authored the art of the deal, she said he built his business on the art of the steal. We said the judgment is $354 million, but once interest is added, that number could well exceed $400 million. The former president has 30 days to either pay or secure a bond pending appeal.